Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Network 27. Alderman Walter Burnett. I want to thank everyone who helped us to put the show together. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone. I hope all of the seniors, if you have been to the senior bingo, that you had a good time and you won a lot of prizes. You know, I can't control who wins, but I hope everyone had a good time. I want to thank all the volunteers who helped me with the bingo. And we want to thank all of the elected officials who came to the bingo and contributed to the bingo so that you all can win some things. So ladies and gentlemen, I got a great show. I have two guests. I have a lot of fantastic information to get on, so I'm trying to move this along so we can get right to it. I want to thank, first of all, my guest, Fritz Kaegi, who is the Cook County Assessor of Cook County, for being on the show. And then we also have Todd Palmer and Mr. Jack Guthman, and they're both with the Biennial. We're going to hear about what the Biennial is in a moment, so sit tight and be prepared to hear some great things that's going on in the city. So, Assessor, Fritz Kaegi, tell us, you're the Assessor, you got elected.
I won the primary in March 2018, won the general in November 2018, and then came into office in December of 2018. So it's been a little bit over 10 months now.
So 10 months, so when you came, there was some stuff happening with the assessors in the assessor's office. First of all, some folks may not even know what the assessor do, right? So just tell us briefly, what does the assessor do?
What the assessor's office does is we help to divide up the property tax bill that's determined by the city and the Chicago Public Schools. So they decide how much money has to be collected, call it, $5, $6, $7 billion. And then how do we divide up that bill amongst us? It's our assessments. And what we do is we estimate the market value of properties so we can split up that bill equally amongst us. Think of us as the office that's about equity.
Mm-hmm. So a lot of folks just got their tax bills, right? Mm-hmm. And in some cases, some people's tax bills went up, like mine, and some people's tax bills went down, like other folks. Can you explain that, and some of those things that happened before you was in the makings before you became assessor?
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, Walter, because there's a couple different forces at play here. First of all, when the city and the Chicago Public Schools need to raise more money, they raise the levy. They say we need to raise more money this year. So that's one of the things that can drive up people's bills, because there's a total larger amount of money that has to be collected. And then we divide up that bill by everyone's assessments, and some people's assessments can change. Now, the assessments that were reflected in people's bill this year were done by last year's administration, by the Barrios administration. They weren't done by me. So basically, the bill that people paid this year reflected levies, taxes coming from the city, from the previous mayor, previous city council, and from the previous assessor. And the reason why people's bills could go up is the way they did reassessments is, especially in your ward, a lot of residential housing prices went up, and that could cause people's share of the levy to go higher.
Okay, so from what I understand, there was some advisor from the University of Chicago or something that advised the assessor to come up with a new formula that hit this time?
Well, so there's a couple different stages to the story here. So in summer of 2017, a great investigation came out showing that assessments that had been done by the previous administration were regressive, were unfair, and did not incorporate some changes that had been previously proposed that they told people they'd put into place. Then there was another study done by the Civic Consulting Alliance backing up that journalistic investigation that was released in February 2018. And then last assessor administration, what they did when they reassessed Chicago last year is they said they incorporated some of the recommendations from the Civic Consulting Alliance. Now, as we look at it today, when we come into office, we see a lot of things that still need to be fixed. The state tells us when we get to reassess Chicago, it'll be in 2021. So we're working up towards making changes that incorporate all these different insights that we can get. But what I wanted to say to people is that we're not taking a model from the University of Chicago. The assessments that people got that were redone last year did not reflect what we think is the best model that could be used. We are doing that in the north suburbs today. We're reassessing the north suburbs. Next year we do the south suburbs. And then Chicago, we do it in 2021. That's when the state lets us do our reassessments. And we will be making lots of changes in Chicago in 2021.
So what affected people today
Yep.
doesn't have anything to do with any of the revisions that you encourage.
Yes, and I am as frustrated as others are that we won't get around to Chicago until 2021 to correct a lot of those mistakes that were made in the reassessment.
So-
However, there's lots of other things that we can do.
Okay.
And I can tell you about those. First of all, we got a very important bill passed in Springfield last session that is automatic renewal of the senior exemption. So as seniors know, you just mentioned the seniors who came to your bingo night. More than 500,000 seniors throughout Cook County have had to reapply every year to get their senior exemption, to recertify that they weren't getting younger, to say that they were still over 65.
Why you look at me when you say that?
Well, I think many of us elected officials, when we have our property tax workshops, people come and ask us, why do I have to certify that I'm not getting younger? Why do I have to do this every year? And it's very frustrating for people. My dad, who's very cheap, he didn't get his exemption one year because he forgot to fill out the form because he was busy with other things. And I know a lot of other people in that situation. And so we got in Springfield, we worked with House leadership to say, hey, there's a lot of data out there that we can do to verify whether someone's moved, whether someone's died. So we got automatic renewal of the senior exemption, which is great. We're working to make exemptions easier for everyone, and it's really important for people in your ward to make sure they're getting all the exemptions that they deserve. The more modest their home, the bigger an impact an exemption has on your property tax bill. So we're working to use better sources of data to make sure everyone's getting the exemptions that they deserve. The third thing we're doing is we're getting better data on what's going on in neighborhoods when it comes to vacancy. I know in your ward and many other wards, people have been very frustrated with an abuse of vacancy treatment. We're perfectly healthy neighborhoods. We see stores staying vacant because of policies that were in place in the assessor's office before us. When we get better neighborhood vacancy data, we can change the way we treat vacancy, so we reward occupancy and don't encourage vacancy. And that can make an immediate impact. We'll start having an impact next year. And as we improve our service, this will also help. We're putting in a new call center, will come into place by the end of the year, and a new website, so that'll serve customers better.
So also, didn't you all, dealing with the senior exemptions, didn't they raise the age a little bit?
No, actually what they did is the age was the same. So anyone who's 65 or older is entitled to...
Not the age, I mean, did they raise the income?
Yes, so now more people qualify for the senior exemption. It used to be $55,000. Well, first of all, any senior gets the senior exemption, but the size of the senior exemption grew, and there's a senior freeze, and people are eligible for the senior freeze at $65,000 a year now. It used to be $55,000. So the benefit for seniors having all their exemptions has grown, and we want to make sure that everyone gets that.
So is the freeze automatic just like the exemption is automatic?
So no, because because the freeze has an income test, you have to reapply every year. But we are looking for ways that we can work with the Illinois Department of Revenue to check this automatically, so we might in the future not have to have automatic certification.
All right, fantastic. So you know, Fritz. So Fritz, so you know, I have a diverse ward.
Mm-hmm.
I have a ward with some of the lowest incomes and some of the highest incomes. I have some areas where I don't have development, and I have areas where I have a lot of development.
Uh-huh.
So I hear a lot from developers,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So right now there's a fear in the development community that, okay, we're not going to build condos
Uh-huh.
because we're worried about what the assessment is going to be or what the tax is going to be on condos, on real estate. So we rather do rentals, right?
Yeah.
And they assume that, you know, in your new formula that something's going to happen that's going to adversely affect the real estate industry. Can you tell us something about that?
Yeah, well, actually, I think it's going to be the opposite. So the first thing that's important in our assessment system is make sure that we're estimating the market values of everyone's property accurately, because when we don't, when it's unpredictable, when it's a black box, then it's harder for everyone to know how they'll be assessed in the future. When we talk to a developer or talk to someone who's looking at a project, and you say, would you rather start a project where you have no idea how the assessment's being done and you have no idea how it's going to be calculated, or would you rather have a system where you know exactly how you'll be assessed, you have a better handle on what could happen with your taxes, and then you can go out to your lenders and be more sure about what your taxes will be? Everyone tells us that the second alternative is better, and that's really important. We have as our head of valuation someone who ran lending for a major local bank, Don Meyer. He ran lending for Byline Bank. We have really good people who have private sector experience out there showing people how our assessments will be done, and we think that'll be making it more predictable. Now, the hardest part, Walter, is that we're in an environment where we know the city has a budget deficit, and we have to try to address that. All of us are working together. You know, I know you on the city side, you're trying to plug the holes in the budget. And so some folks in the real estate community are worried about property taxes being driven by higher levies. But I think in this new budget, it was pretty terrific that it seems like property taxes won't have to be raised that much. And if we can do that, that will reassure that community. On the assessment side, it's really the unpredictability that hurts. You know, what I'm really glad you asked the question, because what I'd like people to know is that we are not out there trying to shift the burden in our assessments. I give my team one mandate, which is just fairly estimate the market value of all properties, use data, show your work, put it all out there. We think that people who are making investments, especially building new things, the most important things is just to know how you'll be assessed and what kind of rate will be in place. And then you can be off to the races. You can structure your finances, make your plans, and you'll be in a much better position to do that now than you were under the old system, where it was completely unknown how these numbers were arrived at. And the last thing I want to mention, Walter, is that we're going to have a special event in December in conjunction with the city where we show the community of underwriters, the people who are making these investments. We give them tools to help them predict where rates could go under different scenarios. So they can look at how we do our assessments and then figure out how the rates impact them. They can look at different levy scenarios for the city and the Chicago Public School, see how that impacts that rates. That makes the whole system more predictable, and we think that'll help more capital get invested in your ward and the rest of the city.
So when you talk about the myth of shifting the burden, so there's a myth out there that you're going to put more burden on the commercial property and take less burden on the residential property.
Yeah, and it's a myth because we're not doing our assessments to arrive.
I mean, being a residential guy, I'm like, that's cool, man.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
Well, look, we're not. The key thing to know is that we don't have a pre-intended arrival point. We're trying to represent what the market values are for everything, and just show good evidence for that. Now, if you look at
trying to be fair.
Yeah, and if you look at what third-party studies shown is that a lot of big commercial structures in the past have been underassessed, meaning that their taxes could go up, and that meant that residential had been overpaying in the past.
So when one go down, another goes up?
But it's not necessarily the case because commercial is so diverse. You know, you have big structures in your ward that might have been underassessed, but in other parts of your ward you have neighborhood mom and pop businesses where we didn't have good data, and a lot of evidence shows that some of those might have been overassessed because think about how much Amazon has done to retail. Think about how much some commercial strips have changed in terms of their activity. And a lot of our commercial assessments haven't been updated in a long time. So we can do a lot better job for those smaller commercial properties too. The key is that we have good data so that we're not mixing fish with fowl. So that when we're assessing a big building, we make sure we treat it differently from how the market treats a small building. Small buildings, they have higher costs. Sometimes they have higher vacancy. They're not professionally managed, might be a mom and pop, so they might have harder collection. These are all things that can hurt their market value, and we need to reflect that in our assessments. What we're just trying to get is better data so we can do this more accurately and make the system more predictable. This is why we've tried to push for another piece of legislation in Springfield, the data modernization bill that has the support of the mayor, the county board, Tony Preckwinkle, many people in the commercial real estate industry. It's passed the Senate. We're working in the House. It would get us better commercial data at the start of the assessment process. This is what's done in 17 other states, so that we could be more accurate and we'd be able to publish data every year so it'd be more predictable to the whole market and would help banks and investors, mom and pop entrepreneurs to better predict what those property taxes could be so that then they can get off to the races and feel comfortable raising capital and filling up their space.
So you was trying to do something else down in Springfield and it didn't go. What was that?
That was it.
And why was that?
That was the data modernization bill. So it passed out of the Senate by bipartisan supermajority. In the House, it has 44 sponsors and co-sponsors now. We've been picking up one co-sponsor a week the last month. We picked up 17 co-sponsors since the end of the session. We're seeking passage out of the Revenue Committee in the House in the veto session. We're seeking passage in the regular session starting in January in the House. That's what needs to be done. It's really important for the city in 2021 that we have this bill passed.
So why would anyone be against that?
Well, some folks who are in the property tax appeals industry, they don't have an interest in having an accurate assessment system. The more inaccurate it is, the less transparent it is, the more money they make. You, and probably many of you, get letters in the mail from people offering to solve your assessment problems. And we don't think people should have to live with that as a matter of course. Let's get things right the first time. So that'll be good for property owners, for the market, maybe not so good for the people who profit from inefficiency. So they're against, we have some people who are more comfortable operating in a system that can be gamed than in a system that's transparent, that works like our peers do in the rest of the country, that's more of a level playing field for everyone, whether you're inside or outside. I think there's a little bit of that. I think some people, they just need to hear more about the bill. They're fearful of change. They might have heard some stuff that makes them worry about privacy or shifting the burden. But if they get a chance to hear what we're doing and talk to us, they come around. A lot of the legislators who weren't ready to co-sponsor in the regular session have now been participating in the governor's property tax appeals, property tax relief task force, have heard us testify. And then they said, hey, this is a great idea. We want to have something that's actionable as a result of the task force, and they've come aboard. And I think the more we talk to folks who are just kind of fearful of change, haven't heard all the details, we can get them aboard too.
Your motive is not to make more money because the money don't come to you.
Well,
right?
that's right. Walter, I'm so glad you asked. We're a revenue neutral office, so the amount of money that has to be collected is determined by the taxing bodies, the city, the CPS, the county, the Water Act, Forest Preserve, and it's a lump sum of dollars that has to be collected every year. Our assessments don't change that. No matter what we do with our assessments, they'll get paid their money. And if our assessment levels rise, that doesn't change the total amount of property tax collected. What it does is it shifts the mix, and everyone needs to know that our assessment system is being fair to everyone. Our assessments are interconnected in Illinois. Your assessment, your assessment, your assessment, in isolation, they don't mean anything. They only mean something compared to how everyone else is assessed. The rate that you pay depends on how others are assessed. So it's really important, even if you don't own downtown commercial property that might be underassessed, that it matters to you because it affects the rate that you pay. So that's why we're revenue neutral as an office, and our assessments are interconnected because we're the office that's about equity. We're splitting up that bill, splitting up that pie that's been baked by others that no one wants to eat. But what we're doing is dividing up something equally, and the standard is by market value.
And then also, I know you mentioned about the letters that people get in the mail from these private folks that's trying to charge people to help them with their assessment, and they're supposed to get a percentage of whatever they save you.
It's expensive help.
So but you guys have a easier way for folks to be able to do that on their own. How can people do that themselves?
That's right, Walter. You can do your appeal yourself. You can go online to our office, just put in your PIN and address, file the appeal. You don't even have to put in comps or do any research on your own. We have a system that will do that for you, and many people find it benefits them to do that. And what I tell people is that there is no one who knows more about your home than you. And you know more, it's 100% true that you know more about your home than we do. Correct the record. If we're getting things that are wrong about your home, or if you want to appeal, make the appeal to us. And also know that we put rules into place so that it is blind to our analysts as to if a lawyer or the identity of a lawyer handling the case. So
So you don't know who's doing it?
no one, our analysts who are looking at, they just look at the numbers. So you might as well keep all that upside for yourself. We're making it real easy. Folks should look out for our new website, which will hit in December real soon. And also, we have a new call center that'll be coming into place so they
How
can
do
call
they
and
get
ask
to that
questions.
website?
It's www.cookcountyassessor.com.
Okay, and what's the phone number?
I don't know the phone number, but if you search for Cook County Assessor's website, you'll find the number, and we're really excited about these changes.
So what's the timeline on people appealing their assessments? I mean, do they appeal their assessments with you, or do they challenge their assessments?
Yeah,
with
you can appeal your assessment. Now we assess 1/3 of the county every year, as I mentioned.
Every year.
Right. So we did the north suburbs this year. South suburbs will do in 2020, and then Chicago will do in 2021. What people should look for is, even if you're not in an area that's being reassessed, you do have a chance to appeal, but there's a window, and they should go to our website. They should look in their mail to see when the window for appeals is open. They can call your office, and you can say, oh, the assessor's office is open for appeals in our community from this date to this date, and then they can make an appeal. Now, in a year when we're not doing a reassessment in Chicago, it's a little bit of a higher standard to uphold an appeal because we're not reassessing. We haven't done a new valuation that year. But if the market value is significantly changed, or if there's a change to if you had a building permit, or if you had some other major change in your neighborhood or on the block, or if there's an error with the information we have about your house, then that's good grounds for appeal. The other thing that I want to mention, Walter, that's very important for people in Chicago to know is that if you missed an exemption one year, you're still entitled to get it. You can look back up to 4 years for exemptions that you missed, and you'll get a cash refund.
4 years?
Yeah, you can get something
God.
called a certificate of error that can save people thousands of dollars. So they should make sure that they got all their exemptions.
I need to go to that website immediately.
Yeah,
see if I got some money.
We don't get many chances to look back in time and go back
4
in
years.
time. But at the assessor's office, you do if you missed your exemptions, and it'll mean real cash to you.
So, so I know I have two guests here. They're going to come on and talk about the biannual. We got a few more minutes left with you. I want to see, do they have any questions to ask you? I know Jack is a real estate attorney. He knows a lot of people. You have any questions to ask the assessor?
Well, my thought is that you spoke about the concerns of the development community.
Yep.
Full disclosure, my client base are the developers in the city of Chicago.
Yep.
So I think part of it, you really explained something very well. I think we're talking with the fear of the unknown.
Yeah.
And that is something in the whole real estate world that you have to deal with. We do it in the zoning world as well. So what I'm impressed with is the manner in which you are going about making sure in forums like this to let people know what is coming and how there is a level playing field coming. It's to combat the fear of the unknown.
Well, thanks, Jack. I appreciate that because change is hard. Anytime you've ever tried to use a new piece of software or do a new layout or run a business in a new way, change is always hard. People don't know how to adjust. Some people are reluctant. But we've been really tried to be really forward out there to get in venues like your show, Walter, get out and speak to different communities. I've been doing a listening tour all throughout the year where I myself have been out there in more than 30 venues. Our office has done hundreds of these. We'll continue to do them. And this Analyst Day we have in December will be really important to the developer community. The people are providing capital for these investments so that they can sharpen their pencils and just see where the numbers are so they can price everything in. And also we just try to reassure people that, sometimes rumors can get ahead of the reality, and we're not trying to shift burdens just to shift burdens. We think the original sin of the office is to take the law into our own hands to achieve a political end. We're trying to be good stewards of the office, and we think it will be result in good things for homeowners, good things for our community, but everyone will be well served by having a more predictable and accountable and transparent system.
So I want to thank you very much. I know I've had you out at meetings in the community. about the assessments. I really appreciate you coming out. Matter of fact, you came and almost got stuck in a church in my ward before.
That's right. You saved me, Alderman. I appreciate it. Well, it was my pleasure. It was
Yeah,
my pleasure.
but also, I know every time I see you in the hallway, I tell you, like, people are saying this, people are saying that, and then you have to explain to me again. I say, man, I'm getting you on my show so you can explain this, because I'm tired of asking you this stuff all the time.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity, and I think conversation and engagement is absolutely the best way to make everything work better.
And
so
also
thank you.
appreciate right before you even got sworn in, you came to meet with me and other elected officials to ask us what ideas and concerns that we have. So I really appreciate that. I think one of the things that I mentioned to you was being concerned about affordable housing.
Yeah.
And we are encouraging these developers to incorporate affordable housing with their developments, and that we need to be more lenient on the affordable component of these in these buildings, so that they don't have to be assessed the same way as the more expensive houses that they may be in the same building.
And that is so important. And we incorporated what you gave us. We're going to have something that we roll out just in the next couple of weeks, actually. It's a real property income and expense form, because the key for us is we need to know when buildings are giving some units affordable housing treatment, or if the whole building is affordable housing, because then when it's not market rate, when it's affordable instead, we need to do our assessments differently.
That's right.
But the key is that we have to know which buildings are doing that. So we've created a new form. We'll be mailing it out to people, and they can enter the data electronically to show us at the start of the assessment process, my building has these affordable units. Here are the commitments that I've made. And then we can take those into account in our assessment at the start, and they don't have to pay a commission to somebody for curing it. Instead, they can give us the information at the start. We can all go off to the races, so people should look out for that.
So that'll help the developers who have committed to affordable housing in their building, affordable units in their buildings, to be able to balance it out.
And it helps everyone by having more affordable housing stock in the community, so we can all live in the places that we love and stay there.
Fantastic. Well, Fitz, thank you very much. I really appreciate you being on the show. I want to thank you for everything that you're doing for the County of Cook.
Well, thanks, Walter, and thanks to join the show. Good to hear you.
If you don't mind hanging out for a minute,
Yeah.
so that we can hear about this great thing that's going
I'm
on.
looking forward to this part.
That I think is going to have an effect on our economy here in the city of Chicago, because it's going to bring more tourists to the city, but it's going to help folks in the city to acknowledge what we have.
Yeah.
Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, again, I want to thank Fitz Kaegi for being here, but also we have two people here from the Biennial. Did I say that right?
Chicago Architecture Biennial.
Chicago Architectural Biennial. We have Mr. Todd Palmer and we have Mr. Jack Guthman. And why don't you guys introduce yourselves? Tell us a little bit about yourselves and tell us about the Biennial.
I'll defer to my chairman first.
First, before I do that, thank you, Walter, for having us on the show, giving us this opportunity to speak about the Biennial. And I have to say thanks for all these years. I've had any number. I'm a lawyer, as you well know, and I'm a petitioner in the ward, as you well know. And the fairness and the treatment that you've accorded to the developer community and the lawyers in Chicago is greatly appreciated. I want to put that on the record as well. The Chicago Architecture Biennial is in its third edition. It has its genesis in the 2012 Chicago Cultural Plan. The idea in the cultural plan that was presented in the cultural plan was that Chicago should become the site of an international meeting, an international exposition of ideas that reflect areas of an area of Chicago's history and where it's already well known, and really on an international scale. So under the auspices of the Department of Cultural Affairs, Michelle Boone was the commissioner at the time, the Architecture Biennial was born. And the idea is several-fold. One is to bring Chicago again to the fore, in this case, in the area of architecture. We have a historic role in architecture, development of architecture in this country and the world. That's known, and we thought we would, again, bring that to the fore. Secondarily, it was an opportunity to add to the cultural landscape of the city of Chicago. By that I mean to have a cultural activity. It's about 3.5 months long. We begin on, this year we began on the 17th of September. We run through January 5, and it is an opportunity to increase our tourism and be part of the, again, the exchange of ideas among cultural institutions in Chicago. And it's a show for Chicagoans. The reality is that a great preponderance of our attendees, and it's about 500,000 people came to each of the first two shows in 15 and 19 and 17. The preponderance are Chicagoans, and the Chicagoans, philanthropists, foundations, corporations pay for it. It is free and open to the public. There is no admission charge. So that's what the biennial is. This year's biennial is particularly poignant, I think, because it points at architecture and its role at the crossroads of the social issues that are facing urban areas, the built environment of our time. And we do that through a variety of exhibitions, programs in the cultural center and in the communities. That's what the Architecture Biennial is and proposes to be.
Fantastic. So Jack, you've been appointed to this position, or you got elected, or how did you take on this position?
Well,
and I know they're paying you a whole bunch of money.
Well,
now, right?
yeah, my inability to say no to Mayor Emanuel is what this was all about. I have frankly a history of working with not-for-profit institutions and being pro bono lawyer for institutions of that nature. The reality is I was only going to be the pro bono lawyer. It grew from there under the auspices of Mayor Emanuel, and now with Mayor Lightfoot, who's been a huge supporter.
So Mayor Lightfoot kept you on, and she supports you.
Well, it's a 501c. We're not a city agency, so I'm not appointed by anyone. We have our own funding. We have our own mechanism. We have our own charter. But we have a very close relationship, as you can imagine, with the city of Chicago. Our primary location is in the Cultural Center, which is a city of Chicago building. So the job evolved, let me put it that way. I had no intention of being its chairman. I had an intention, as I've done for lots of years, of being the lawyer. But now I'm doing the other stuff as well.
Well, thank you very much for your service. And you get your pay in a whole bunch of other ways. So,
well, you're kind.
God bless you. So Todd Palmer, you're an architect.
Trained as an architect.
Trained as an architect. Yeah. You're involved with this biennial. Tell us your role in the biennial, and tell us, what do people have to look forward to coming to the biennial?
Absolutely. So I came to this role as trained as an architect, working in the world of museums for about 20 years. Worked with David Ajay and Ralph Appleman Associates, who is an exhibit designer doing the Obama Library currently. Worked with all of them on the National Museum of African American History and Culture. So a lot of my work has been, how do you take places actually and turn them into something that's educational, tells a story, reveals truths that may have been covered up. In the case of African American history, immediately before the biennial, I was working at the National Public Housing Museum in Chicago, which is a startup organization trying to tell those stories in Chicago, but nationally and even internationally. So my role is, as the executive director, really is the organizer of this major event. It includes an exhibition, as Jack mentioned, which is downtown at the Cultural Center, but we have offsites in neighborhoods. We work with some of the long-standing cultural institutions, from the DuSable Museum to the National Museum of Mexican Art, the Puerto Rican Museum. As anchor sites, they work with us on programs and education. We have our own learning initiatives, which includes bringing young people on buses to the Cultural Center. We do that in the collaboration with the Chicago Architecture Center. So about 10,000 young people every biennial come, and we tour them through. We have created a curriculum. For the first time this year, we have a youth guide, so if you come with your family, there's a great handout with about 10 stops for coloring, thinking through some of the questions. As Jack said, there's some tough topics in the Biennial, but we try to make them very accessible and even fun. And I was actually, as I was listening to you, I can imagine a Biennial exhibit about some of these topics. Like, I mean, not just imagine, there are exhibits on how do we level the playing field? How do we create more equity in the built environment? You know, questions of affordable housing, but they're done not through charts and graphs and maps. It's an architecture Biennial that you can bring your family to. So there are one-to-one mock-ups of, for example, in Brazil, they're looking at a lot of commercial properties that sit vacant and thinking about how do you turn that into affordable housing. So we have a one-to-one scale model that shows you what that looks like. What scale is that? There's sort of a floor plan that you can walk through. There's videos that show you before and after. And they make a bit of an appeal for Chicagoans to help them out with this initiative, but we hope that maybe some people in Chicago get some ideas from this.
So
Yeah.
you mentioned Brazil.
Uh-huh.
So you have art, you have architectural.
Yes, there's 20 countries
So
involved.
it's different countries involved.
Yeah, so it's in Chicago and of Chicago, but it's not necessarily about Chicago.
Okay.
And it's thinking about the role that Chicago's played on the world stage historically. So thus high-rises that we have here in Chicago, we would claim to be the origin of the high-rise. And you know, New York might quibble, but one can say that around the world, those high-rises are a legacy of Chicago. And you can see some of the best examples right now of Chicago architecture in Asia, for example. A lot of the firms are building in Asia. So how do we bring, if you're a young person, some of the kids I worked with in the Public Housing Museum growing up on the west side or the south side, you may just see those high-rises downtown. You may not even be aware of the ways in which this city affects the world. So for us, it's really important to bring the world to Chicago, to bring, in this case, a lot of activists, grassroots organizations working on issues that really touch on the questions really that are pressing at home, and open up people's minds, young people's minds about what's possible.
And Walter, if I could break in, Todd, I mean, what you said is so important. My old job, I used to be an international investor, and I'd get visitors coming from around the world to our offices, and I'd oftentimes show them around Chicago. And what people around the world love to see about Chicago, they don't hear enough, is when they get out to see the neighborhoods, and they see good things they haven't heard about that are really unique. And we have a special culture here in Chicago that's really evinced in our architecture. And so when you take people out to 26th Street in Little Village, or take them down to South Shore and show them the special architecture there, or go to Pullman, or go to other places. In your ward, you have part of world labor history is in your ward and in the architecture, and you can bring all this together. It's really amazing.
And all of those things are shown here at the Biennial.
Yeah,
Yes.
Let me follow it up for a minute, because we're talking about why the Biennial. One of the, and I touched on it briefly, which is to remind the world about what Chicago is all about. We are in 20 different, we have participants from 20 different countries, but we also have a very aggressive PR program which has done a spectacular job of bringing this biennial and the prior biennials to the attention of people around the world. So that reinforces Chicago as a place to visit as well, not only because we have the great buildings, but also as a place which is a ferment, where there's a ferment of ideas about architecture in the built environment. I also want to comment on one other thing that Todd said, because I may have slipped over this a little bit. He mentioned it, and that is the educational program. 12,000 kids come through the biennial, or the biennial goes to their classrooms. We have a variety of programs, but from the beginning, the education program has been a major activity of the biennial. On December 17, Mayor Lightfoot will present awards to students who have created buildings, that is, have done drawings about buildings, and Todd can give you much more detail on this, and I think he might want to, across the Chicago school system, because we want to bring the idea of architecture and being an architect and being a designer to kids that might never have thought of this before.
Yes. So I'm going to elaborate and connect some dots. So they're actually, the project they did in the spring, it'll be different in December, was to look at vacant lots, which you mentioned. So kids in the Chicagoland region from Northwest Indiana, where my family's from actually, to Chicago Public Schools all had, submitted these ideas, and their ideas range from sort of monuments to speak to, citizens whose voices aren't heard, to trauma wards, to affordable housing. It was really diverse and amazing and inspired, and some of them made videos, some of them made models, but they were all very creative. Vacant lots actually come up in the Biennial, so you mentioned some of these places, Little Village, Inglewood. There's an amazing young architect, trained as an architect, but really working in undefinable ways. We can just call him a genius because he just was announced as one of the MacArthur Genius Grant awardees. His name is Emmanuel Pratt. He's been working in Inglewood on the problem of vacant lots. There's a lot of vacancy in that neighborhood, and starting to scale different ways of turning those vacant lots into something that can be what he would call a seed or incubator of thriving community. So started with farming, and then but farming as something he teaches, not just he does, but as something that you can then do yourself, and then wanting to create a community gathering space, that the community built this gathering space, so he started a carpentry workshop, noticing that then there's lots of 19th century workers' cottages that one could repair or build new. So what they do in their carpentry workshop is learn the techniques of building those 19th century buildings, and then they make their own. So what we have in the Cultural Center is a 19th century style workers' cottage brought from his vacant lots in Inglewood. It's called Sweetwater Foundation, to inspire anyone that comes downtown to go out actually in Inglewood and see the real thing. I mean, this is the real thing, but there's a lot more. There's a barn, there's a think-do house. It's pretty amazing.
And how do we span things? Next week, and by the way, his name is Emmanuel Pratt.
Yes.
He's a remarkable guy. I've gotten to know him. I'm doing a little pro bono work for him now. The reality is that he has an event with a Mexican architect at his location next week, co-sponsored by the Graham Foundation and the Chicago Architecture Biennial. And it's sort of a rolling seminar on the built environment and urbanism. I'm going to take part in that
And
for
she
him.
got some of her acclaim from being in the first two biennials. Her name
That
is
is-
Tatiana Bilbao.
yes.
So we're becoming a force in the world and in Chicago, and I think that synergy of pushing the world conversation and informing and improving Chicago is sort of our special sauce.
Important word, synergy.
Yeah.
That we bring people together. We bring ideas together.
And that's what it sounds like. So it sounds like this biennial is not just for the people in the city of Chicago, although it is for the people in the city of Chicago, because it enhances and recognizes things that's going on in the city, but it also recognizes things that's going on around the world, right? And then it gives people from Chicago and outside of Chicago an opportunity to see what's going on in Chicago architecturally, but also what's going on architecturally around the world.
At two levels, by the way, Alderman. There's the professional level. We become a place where lots of professional organizations or classes from Columbia, which is his school, or from Harvard, or from Princeton, come in and take part, have programs at our biennial, and take part in seminars at our biennial, come and visit the biennial. And so there's the professional level, and then there's the public level. And we try, I think we're successful, appeal to both.
Fantastic. So Jack, sounds like a lot of work. It sounds like
I'll agree with that.
It sounds like a lot of organizing. It sounds like a lot of cultivating. So you got to have a lot of people involved. I know you have a non-for-profit. How do you raise money for this, Jack? How do you pay for this? You know what I'm saying?
We
what do you do?
We have a very generous. Chicagoans are very generous and they're very collaborative. So our lead sponsors are BP, which is actually has about 3,000 employees in the Chicago area. It's based in London, but it's a major Chicago employer. Exelon and the company, a lesser-known company, but a man named Tom Herbis, who is a philanthropist in town, has done a lot of things across the cultural and educational arena in Chicago. We also have foundations, a lot of foundations involved. And as I said, this is a very giving place. There are a lot of individual people people of substance who give money, and we're talking about 5 figures and 6 figures numbers.
So because it's such a given place doesn't mean that you couldn't use more money, right?
We could use more money.
So,
Let me tell you.
so if somebody,
This is where the private sector, the nonprofit sector, and government can all agree.
that's right. So we're doing. So if somebody wanted to be a part of this, be a part of showing off their city, but also be a part of allowing people in their city to be able to see the world, right, architecturally. How could they contribute to this?
Well, we are willing to take obviously love to take
We do have a
contributions.
website,
Yeah,
chicagoarchitecturebiennial.org. Right now it's set up there's a section called support, and you can get in touch with us.
And then what if
about,
people want to volunteer with the Biennial?
We have actually a very robust volunteer program.
Because it's a lot of work.
Yeah, and it's
I mean,
actually
just
a lot of fun
guiding
things.
students
So,
around and doing the programs.
yeah, we have docents. We have tours, free tours to the public on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturdays, and those are run by our volunteers for the most part. So that's something you can sign up and train. We have greeters. We have to stuff envelopes. We have lots of collateral to put on the floor. So there's tons of things to do. And again, there is a sign up on the website.
So tell me
for the
that.
volunteer
So
program.
you mentioned that you have the Cultural Center, but you have several other spots.
Yes.
So where are those locations?
Yes. The primary offsites, well, we have some different kinds of offsites. Some of them are not always activated. The very exciting program on South Sides at the Overton Elementary School, which is being sort of an initiative of the developer Guion Foreman. When those 50 schools closed, he's been collaborating with a Mexican-American architect named Paula Aguirre, and the Biennial sort of adopted that site, which you can go almost any day and there's guys playing basketball, but once a month it comes alive. There's an audio installation, there's a sort of outdoor picnic table, like the most picnic table, almost a jungle gym, I would almost call it, that was co-designed by young people in the CAPE program out in that neighborhood of Bronzeville. So that, I think the next time it's open is in November. That'll be on our website. We have an events, and you click down week by week. Every day of the week that museums are open at the Hull House. There's a Cuban artist named Tania Baguera, who has a program called Arte Util, and they're exhibiting at the Hull House along with a Puerto Rican artist named Jorge Gonzalez. At the School of the Art Institute in Homan Square, we have a collaboration of young people from that community working with an African artist to take photographs. His name is Akambode Akambi. And then we have 100 partners in the city. So again, there's a map on the website.
Oh my God! So people can go all over the city.
So one
and
just
see
I'll call
different-
out that's kind of amazing. At Garfield Park, the Danish Ministry of Culture collaborated to bring some architectural artists, and they planted a cabbage patch, which is a place you can pick and grow and sort of learn about cuisine and recipes. But one of the themes of the Biennial is land. So vacant land, farmland, but before there's architecture, there's land. The Astor Gates is an expert on thinking about real estate and land and turning that into culture. So he's actually in the Biennial this year
So
as
this
well.
isn't just about architecture.
Yeah, it's
This
bigger
is
than
about-
architecture.
This is about culture.
Yeah, it's architecture as a jumping off point
It's
for
about
everything.
international.
Like,
I mean, this is huge.
Imagination.
So this also helps the city. I mean, it helps the city with tourism. So are
Absolutely.
you all working with cultural affairs?
Well, they're our
Not
landlord.
cultural affairs. I mean, Choose Chicago.
Both.
Oh, Choose
Yeah.
Chicago has been a
Which is the
wonderful
tourism
partner.
bureau.
They've been a wonderful partner.
And they're spreading this out internationally to
We
let
do-
folks
we-
know when they come
We
here. they
have
can-
our own PR operation, but they coordinate with us. We're partners.
Yeah, so it's-
We started that with Desiree Rogers, and it's continued under Glenn Eden, the new head of Choose, and it's very much a partnership. One of the things that we wanted to do, we're not the Lone Ranger. We want to be part of the community. That was really my primary thought in taking over the chairmanship, is we were only in the cultural center. And the first thing I wanted to do is get into the communities. And we did that first with the 6 sites that we started with. Last time, the number of sites have increased. The number of institutions has increased. And I think the breadth and scope of what we are doing, even on the student side, remind me, I think we had 47 neighborhoods covered last year. Students from 47 of the 77 Chicago neighborhoods participated in the Biennial.
So
we're about reach. We're about Chicago.
Well, I tell you, it's very important that our young people from across the city get to see other parts of the city, right? And get to come out of the neighborhoods and get to discover that there's other things in the city. So that's beneficial to them, but also at the same time is important for other people in the city to see other parts of the city.
Yeah.
So they can know that they don't live in a silo, that we have a beautiful city all over this city, and you can't paint everybody with one brush, because this is a great city. So that's a great thing for folks in this city, but also for people from around the country. And what this does is, if you having these things going on all around the city, being on the Choose Chicago board, what this does is it gives people an opportunity to spend their money in those communities.
Yes.
Right? So it helps these areas economically. So it's an economic development engine by exposing people to communities. And I would venture to say, just in my experience as alderman for 25 years, I have had some cultural things that happen in some parts of my ward, right, where people who never been to those areas come. Next thing you know, they're opening up businesses in those areas. They're buying real estate in those areas. They're moving to those areas. They're shopping in those areas. And it helps the whole city as a whole when people get around and see things. So I want to thank you guys for what you're doing for the city of Chicago. I think this is fantastic. I hope that people take advantage of it and experience what you all are offering to the community. We have about 5 minutes left. Guys, is there any other thing you want to say before you get done? Can you let folks know your website again?
Yeah, I'll say it's chicagoarchitecturebiennial.org, and all those words are, Chicago's easy to spell, but yeah, Biennial's BIENNIAL, I hope I spelled that right, .org.
Okay.
And we're really mean it. We think we're a pan-Chicago, all over Chicago institution. We want people to come. We want people to come to the communities as well. We're continuing looking at additional programs. Even at this late date, we would be able to do some of that. We hope people will come and participate in our tours. Our tours are really good because sometimes these exhibits are not so easy to decipher.
Yeah.
So if you walk through with someone who is knowledgable, it gives you a whole different view of these.
And how long is this going to be going on?
It closes January 5th, 2020.
So we have a little time, guys.
We have a little
Take
time.
advantage
And I
of this.
just, as someone that studied architecture, and you mentioned, that in the world of architecture, there's one sort of perhaps more popular or more well-known biennial, which is in Venice. But it's a destination for the world to see the world, a little bit like a World's
I
Fair.
like
so
that. A
when
destination for the world to see the world.
So when you mention for Chicagoans to see each other and see different neighborhoods, or for the world coming here, I think when you come here, you're getting to see things that you wouldn't otherwise, unless you were extremely wealthy, get to go to 20 countries in one stop.
And all of this
And
is
it's
free.
all right here in Chicago.
And all of this
and
is
it's all
yes,
free.
so it's a free mini trip. Come to the Cultural Center.
Fantastic. Well, guys, God bless you all. Thank you all very much for your civic duty and for your contribution to the city of Chicago and actually to the people from all over the world. We really appreciate your
Thanks
service.
for having us all.
Thank you
Thank
all
you
very
for
much.
having us.
Bravo.
Thank you for coming on the show. So I want to thank you guys. I want to
meet
thank
you.
Good to meet you.
I want to thank Jack Guthman and also Todd Palmer. Jack, you need to let everybody know, because they probably this is he sounds like a good lawyer. I need to hire him. Let them know you're not a lawyer anymore. You retire, right?
I keep my hand in.
Okay.
I spend more time doing this.
Okay. All right. We're not advertising your law business.
And I didn't mention it at
You
all.
sure did, but also we want to thank our assessor, We appreciate you coming on, explaining these things to us. Actually, I'm going to look this over and over again.
Yeah,
so I
please
can,
do.
And I would advise people to look at this, let everybody else know about it.
Yeah.
People, if what we do, as you all know, we put this on our podcast for all of our shows. If you see this show right now and you may miss our shows, you can always call my office, get on our email list, and we would email you, and it would be on the podcast, and you get to see the show.
That's great. And if I could just put in one more plug, we have a new website that'll be rolling out in December for the Assessor's Office website. And in just this month, we're releasing a new application that'll let people see all the different parcels in Chicago that have been given vacancy treatment. And if people are really digging deep into the Biennial, then they can take it a step further and see, hey, what's been given vacancy treatment on the in our assessment system, and it'll be a great way to see it. And there's some surprising things. You'd think that most of the vacant parcels in the south would be on the south and west sides, but we find that using this application that most of the vacant parcels are lighting up the north side like a Christmas tree, and it's a real eye-opener. Yeah.
Oh, my God. Well, fantastic. Well, Assessor, I want to thank you very much. Assessor Fritz Kaegi, what's your website again?
It's www.cookcountyassessor.com.
And then on there they would be able to get you're going to have a number
They'll
that
be able to
call.
get the application. There's a number that you can call, and we'll have a whole new website in December that we're very excited about.
Fantastic. So you all heard it here.
We just broke news.
You heard it here. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you all for coming on Network 27. Everybody, get ready for the holidays. I hope everybody has some safe holidays. You enjoyed your Thanksgiving and saw your family and help someone. Remember, these are the seasons to help someone, but don't just do it now. Do it for the rest of the year too. God bless you all. I want to thank everybody who helped us put this show together. Thank you for watching Network 27. I'm Alderman Walter Burnett. See you next month.